So I think we're gonna go ahead and start with like the studying tips. Um, so I'm gonna take it to our panelists. Maybe you can start with Ali, and if you can share the tips that worked for you and what advice you have for students taking the exam.
Sure. And the other panelists can obviously feel free to jump in at any point, but I can just give you a brief explanation of how I studied for the bar exam. I use Barbary. I think that's one of the more popular options, and they have a full course that covers the entirety of the bar exam, depending on what jurisdiction you're sitting. And I followed it pretty closely. I got close to finishing the entirety of the program, but I actually didn't hit 100%. And I think most people don't hit full 100%. I'm sure the other panelists could talk about their experience as well with that. But I followed it close in terms of the structure of how I studied. They have a pretty detailed program and study plan that takes, you have to give it basically your start date and your end date for studying dates. And they customize a plan for you to make sure that you get through all the important materials, all the different subjects for both the MBE, the MEE, and the MPT. So it covers the entirety of it. Um, and I followed it pretty closely. I made sure to watch all the videos, and I also had a bunch of books. They usually, when you sign up for the course, they send you all the books. So I had it sort of as a reference. So as the videos were playing, I followed along in the book, and that's what worked for me generally. I'll get into sort of the specific sort of nuances of the program, I guess, later on throughout this presentation. But that at a basic level, what I did is I watched all the videos of Barbary and I followed along in the reference textbooks. And what that let me do is get sort of the audio, the visual, and also sort of reading and following along. And so that's how I had the majority of the material stick with me. And I'll kick it off to the other panelists to sort of run through what they did.
Fanta, go ahead.
Sure. I'm actually a retaker. Technically, I took the Delaware bar exam first, and I did not pass the Delaware bar exam, and I did use Barbary. And then I took, and I missed it by a point. I won't take it again, but I did take the uniform bar exam, and I did pass that on my first try. And what I did differently was the first time I did take Barbary, and I think that Ali is correct that it's an excellent program if that's how you study, and if that's how you learn. But for me, I'm not someone who really does well with just watching, those long lectures. That didn't really work for me. So I kind of stuck to what worked for me in law school. I was successful in law school, so I figured what worked in law school should theoretically work for the bar exam. And what that was for me was just outlining, doing extremely detailed outlines, and also doing a lot of flashcards and utilizing the critical pass flashcards. So although I think that Barbary is great, I think you need to also make sure that you know how you learn. If you're someone that when you're in class, like you're tuning out the lecturer, then maybe watching those 8 hour long lectures may not work for you for Barbary. So just, figure out what works best for you. I do think that Barbary is probably the best that's out there in terms of bar prep materials. But I think that if you follow Barbary and couple that with your own strategies, then you'll be successful. I don't think that I don't think it really makes too much sense to just go do something brand new and blindly. So just think about how you learn and what your learning style is and apply that to the bar exam, because none of the material in the bar exam for the most part is new. It's all 1L or 2L subjects. So if it's really just a review and you're learning how to review the material so that it can stick and so that you can apply it to the facts on the exam. So that's what worked for me. And I just stuck with that throughout the summer, and I was really successful in the bar exam, the UBE last year. So I'll give it off to the rest of the panelists to discuss their tips.
Yeah, I guess I'll go. For me, I had a similar experience as Ali and Fanta with using Barbary. I did take the exam twice before I passed it, the California bar exam. I had Barbary guided pass, so they gave me a free second chance with it.
Yeah.
I utilized it quite differently the second time around. I did watch the videos again, and they did have some extra supplemental videos that went specifically into the topics that were more like visual and less just like a person reading off of a prompter. I forget what they called them, but I found those to be really helpful as well for me because I'm more of like a visual learner. And, that kind of played a role in what I decided to do the second time around. I'm sure many of the people here today are familiar with Adaptabar. I used Adaptabar the first time around. I didn't find that to be as helpful, only because it was like dictated by an algorithm. So you might get stuck in one specific area of the law if you don't do enough questions, right? Until you force the algorithm to show you different questions. So I struggled with that. Um, and also the explanations are more just like written out explanations. But the second time around, I used a software called UWorld, which if you have Themis, if you got a Themis subscription, then that comes with your package. And I found UWorld to be a lot more intuitive for me and a lot more liberating or free because I was able to choose the different topics I wanted to focus in on rather than Adaptable. They show you what they think you need to do based on your previous answers. And also just the explanations, they would have diagrams, like, for something like battery or something about like assault or anything, burglary. They show you like an image and they explain it to you. Um, as far as memorization goes, Barbry's pretty good with giving you the outlines in their books. I'm sure Themis and Kaplan also have that, but there's a lot of supplemental material you could find online that are like maybe 1 to 2 pages of just like the major topics that are tested with the major roadmaps. I'm sure it's different for like every state, but in California, there's one called Magic Sheets. And like I would just like upload that to something called like Speechify, and I would just listen to that over and over again for like the last 2 weeks and just listen to it as like an auditory like way of trying to memorize it and having it stick to my brain really. And that helped me a lot with memorization. And then one other thing I would say specifically for the MBEs, aside from UWorld and doing every question on that question bank, there's something called Goat Bar Prep, which is more of like a fun thing you could use on the side as a supplemental from all the other things where this individual he's taken a bunch of bar exams and he makes a bunch of memes for the different topics tested on the MBE for all the different subjects. And you can just read through it on like your own leisure time after a long day of studying, like while you're in bed or like whenever you have free time. And it helps. Honestly, I thought it helped a lot, especially the second time around, just having those like funny things in your mind while you're taking the exam makes you feel less stressed out. Also, just thinking about the way he thinks about it too, and making it like disarms the bar exam from feeling intimidating, making it feel kind of silly too. So it helps mentally too.
That's great. I took the bar exam in 2018 and I don't remember any memes out there. Maybe I was just living under a rock and didn't notice, but that's awesome that they have those now to make it like a little bit more lighthearted. Um, so yeah, if you like that, that's definitely a good helpful like review strategy. And I also want to uplift what the panelists have said about really knowing how you study and leaning into that and like not having to follow strictly everything that your bar prep course tells you because that's just like one way of doing it and but there's no one way for studying. Everyone studies differently, so definitely lean into what you know works for you. Similarly with like the schedule of studying, like everyone I felt like when I was about to take it said that, oh, you have to study from like 9 to 5. And that was really daunting, like to study for the same thing for 8 hours. And it's like, so, these are boring topics. They're not exciting. So I remember I just could not do it. And it was Ramadan during the time I was studying. So it's just a lot. But I ended up like splitting up my day of like studying like 4 hours. And then after I broke my fast, I would study more. So it was like, you also don't have to like sit there and just like read the book or watch the videos or whatever like straight because I feel like that's, probably not healthy for everyone. Um, but it works for some people too. So if it works for you, great. If not, you can find a different way. Okay, then moving on to the next topic. Actually, let me pause there. Are there any questions from participants about anything the panelists shared or just on studying tips? Let me check the chat. Okay, I can't see anyone's faces, so if anyone has questions, you can come off mute or put it in the chat. Okay. All right, we'll go into the next topic, which is accommodations. Any panelists have experience requesting accommodations? Any advice you have for that?
I had some experience requesting accommodations. I took the July 24 bar exam with time and a half. Um, you're, I don't know how it is in other states, but in California, you're usually in like a smaller room from everyone else, away from like the big uh hall, basically with maybe like eight other people. Um, and specifically for accommodated students, I think there's a need to be what's it called? Aware of the amount of time you'll be sitting for the exam. I think the average day of the exam's like 8 hours, but for us with time and a half, it's closer to like 12 hours. So that puts a lot of strain on your body. And, when practicing and getting ready for the bar exam, like you want to be prepared for that and like practice sitting for that long beforehand, and also practice having your physical and mental well-being in a place where you'll be able to handle that stress on your body, because it's a lot, especially since I mean I did it twice with time and a half. It's a lot of mental fatigue, but also a lot of physical fatigue. So aside from just, requesting the accommodations, being ready for that. And when it comes to requesting accommodations, it really depends on what it is you're requesting an accommodation for. Sometimes you have to do it 6 months in advance, or if there's like emergency accommodations for whatever reason. I know of cases where people tore their ACL or injured their knee and they needed accommodations for the exam and they were able to get it. And the bar is usually pretty good about giving a person the accommodations they need, as long as you give them the proper paperwork and whatnot. So it really just depends on everyone's individual case by case basis.
I was just gonna say I don't have an experience with accommodations, but I have a really good friend that had a similar situation where about halfway through bar prep, she broke her back, like she had to have back surgery, and she did have to request accommodations. But in Delaware at that time, the cutoff time for emergency accommodations had cut off. So it ended up being a terrible situation for her. So just make sure that inshallah, everybody's going to be healthy and well during the bar exam, and you won't have to have this be a problem. But if it is going to be a problem, or even if it's an emergency, just be aware of those deadlines now. That way, if it comes up, then you know what your options are.
Yes, thank you both for that. I will also share that the California bar, um, it has like a head covering policy where it prohibits head coverings, but if you have you want to seek a religious exemption, you can. Um, I ended up, alhamdulillah, I noticed it when I was applying for the bar, but it's like kind of buried in there. So I had a friend who didn't notice it, and she's hijabi, and yeah, went to her testing center in a very Muslim area, unfortunately. And the people working there didn't let her in at first because she had a head covering and didn't have the letter showing that she was exempted from it because of religious exemption, and give her a really hard time. And, it was just horribly stressful. And so she ended up also, not being able to focus on the exam and having to retake it. Um, but then the location I took it at didn't even care about the letter. I brought it and they were like, okay, I don't need to see that. So it really depends. But just wanted to give a heads up for anyone taking California. Apparently that rule is still in place. I just checked. And I don't know if other states have that rule too, but if it applies to you, I would double check. And then last year when we hosted this, we also had a panelist who was breastfeeding during the time. Of the exam. So she had, I think, had to request accommodations for pumping, and was able to get that. So if that applies to anyone, definitely try to look into that and see how you do that beforehand. Looks like we have a few questions in the chat now. Let's see. One is about time management. Um, yeah, time management during the exam versus or during your prep versus taking the exam. It can feel a little different. And any panelists have some guidance on time management during the exam?
I think that's it's purposeful that you don't have enough time in this exam. I think that's like half the battle with the bar exam. So first off, know that you're not alone. I think you just have to, when you're doing the practice tests and you're going through, for example, I did Barbary, and in Barbary, there were certain points in the lesson plan where they said to do something in a timed sort of environment. So, for example, there'd be an MEE question, like an essay, and they'd say, time yourself, do it in X amount of time. And to actually follow that, I think is very important. You just have to get the reps in basically, and then you'll learn, how long you take to outline a question, how long it takes for you to, write out the answers. And that's very important with the essays and the MPT, but also the MBE. Because what can happen on the MBE is, you get bogged down in the first 50 questions, and then you don't have nearly as much time as you want on the rest of the questions. So you have to remind yourself, that you have to keep moving. Even if there's a few questions you have to skip or just put down what you think is the best answer and move on. It's very important to hold yourself to sort of the time management skills that you learn only by, I think, doing the reps and constantly doing it and learning how long everything takes you. I'll let the other panelists also jump in on this because I think it's an important topic to touch
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, I agree. I think that especially for um, the MPT it's half the day, at least for the UBE states. I don't know if it's different in California, but Delaware is the same. The MPT is half that day, and you're supposed to do 90 minutes per MPT. And I think you should stick to that strictly. And what I guess some of my professors said to just split it in half, do 45 minutes, use that as your prep and your outline time, and then use the last 45 minutes of that time to actually write it out. Um, my goal was to bring that first 45 minutes down to like 35 minutes. And if I could read and outline and just prepare my answer and understand what's in the library and all of that prior to, that gives me much more time to write, because you can read it all you want, but what's being graded is what's on the screen, whatever you type out. So you can understand it, but if the grader or the examiner doesn't have that to grade, then it's not going to get graded. So you need to be able to put as much as you can on that exam. And I think the way you can do that is by uh, making sure you comprehend whatever the prompt is and whatever's in the library and the rules and all that. But if you can do that as quickly as possible, you'll give yourself more time to actually write, and then you'll have more. You're just picking up points, so that's going to help you pick up those points later on down the line. So that's what I suggest. I suggest if you can get it down to like 35 to 40 minutes for that first part, and then leave that remainder for your writing. And if you can, maybe even just write for like 40 minutes and give yourself 5 minutes just to clean up, because you're writing so much. There's going to be typos. There's going to be things that don't really make sense. Now, you don't get points off for a typo or spelling errors or anything like that. But if your spelling error changes the meaning of a sentence, then you could not get the point for that. So that's something to just keep in mind. I would suggest just mapping out how long it's going to take you. Just like Ali said, mapping out how long it's going to take you to do each thing. And then for that prep time, just try to cut it down as much as you can, because that's going to help you out. And then once you get it down on that paper, you're just picking up points, and that's the goal. You want to pick up points. You can understand the library all you want, like you can memorize all those rules, but it's not going to mean anything if they don't have anything to grade. So that's what I'll say in terms of the MPT. And then for the MEEs, kind of the same thing. Give yourself like 5 to 7 minutes to read the call of the question and the prompt, and then write. Just write write as much as you can in that last 20-ish minutes that you have for each essay.
I'll jump in here. I'll say that if you are familiar with the bar exam, you have to take a practice bar exam, download it to make sure everything works on Exemplify. And in that practice bar exam, they have a timer in the Exemplify program. So if you are worried about your timing and you want to give yourself a certain amount of time, you can set a timer in the Exemplify during the bar exam. That's what I did when I took the bar exam. I give myself 30 minutes every essay. 30 minutes, whether I was done or not, I had to move on, and I was able to keep myself on time and on track by using that in-house tracker. So when you take the practice bar exam, don't just skip through it and run through the Exemplify program, make sure it works. Actually look through the programming. There might be some helpful information on highlighting, helpful information on control alt deletes and how to, you accidentally delete something, you want something back. Pay attention to that because there's also a timer in there that can help you stay on time. If you're really worried about having a time section and allocating the correct time, make sure you're using the timer on the Exemplify software while taking the bar exam.
Yeah, and I guess I'll add some other points as well. I think when we're doing practice problems before the bar exam, sometimes we might get hung up on writing the perfect essay covering all the issues and all the topics. But when it comes to the actual bar exam day, you're going to have those hard cutoff times for each section of the exam. You're not going to have time to really craft the perfect answer or the perfect you know, element section with the perfect analysis. You have to hit as many of the points as you possibly can and as quickly as you can. And if you're able to get those main points in, whether that be, like maybe or negligence going through all the different elements for that, you got to do that quickly. And, if you can't remember all the elements or all the rule statements perfectly, it's okay to make it up that sounds somewhat similar to it because the grader, I don't know if it's like this in the other states, but in California the graders are not specifically looking or giving you full points just for writing the elements out or the rule statements out, but they're also looking at your analysis. So when you're practicing, I think knowing how to apply the rule to the facts and analyzing that and putting that to from pen to paper and writing that out, that's going to be where most of your points are going to be. So if you're spending any extra time, like it should be on that and not like, worrying too much about, oh, did I find all the different issues? But if you get like the main issues and if you are able to analyze as much as you possibly can, and the grader's going to see that, you're going to get a good amount of points for that essay. And also for the PT, in California, it's worth two essays. And you're gonna want to like try to prioritize that on the second half of the day compared to like the other essays from that same time as well.
Thank you all. These are really helpful tips, and I hope test takers are, you know, taking these points as key takeaways for them and trying to implement them. So thank you. Um, Next question is about if you remember how many MPTs, MBEs, and MEEs you took as practice. I'm guessing the answer might vary, but if you have any thoughts on that question.
Yeah, I could go. I did take the exam twice. The first time around, I did about like 60 essays, and that's covering various topics that are covered in California. I think I did at least three or four per subject. And then for the PT, I did about 10. And then the second time around, I had made it a point not to do any because I just wanted to focus on the MBE because that's where my weakness was, the MBE. So it really just depends on where your strengths and weaknesses are. I think I did go a bit overboard that first time around doing as many essays as I did. And I think you're going to know yourself best. And it's going to be a work in progress for everyone to see like what works best for you. I think if I were to do it again, I would just issue spot a bunch of essays since I've already got the structure down and I was comfortable with my timing and everything. So I think once you're able to write in that amount of time that's given to you on the exam and you're able to issue spot, then I think you should be okay doing a couple of essays per day. And I think later on in the examination journey of studying for it, you could switch it up. You don't have to stay locked in and dedicated to like what you had early on, and you're able to adapt and change based on your changing needs and skills that you've developed. I think that's the best way to go about it instead of just being solely focused on I need to hit these many essays before exam day.
I would say that I'm also a retaker. So, and then I took a state specific the first time and then UBE the second time. Uh, it really varies. If anybody's taking a Delaware bar exam, you can message me separately because that's a separate conversation. In terms of the essays, it's completely different than the MBE, and it's different than California as well. But for the MBE or for the UBE, I took around outside of what was provided like in the Barbary system, because by then I wasn't using Barbary, I was using Bar Now, which is from the NCBE. They have like a bunch of past administered actual bar exam essays. So I used that program. In that program, they have about 15, between 9 and 15 essays per subject. I probably did maybe 8 or so per subject, between 6 and 8 per subject. And then the thing about that was I kind of just wanted to do that for me because although writing was my strong suit in when I took the exam the first time, I just didn't want to lose that because I had never taken the UBE before. So I didn't want to just not study for the essays. And then on test day, I'm like, scrambling. So it really just depends on what your strong suits are. But because I had never taken the UBE at that point, I just took like 6 to 8 essays for each topic, maybe even more than that for some of the topics that I was kind of struggling with. But for torts, for example, I probably did like 6 of those because that's like a pretty standard topic. But for family law, which I hadn't taken family law, I took more of those essays. So it really just depends on, what you're comfortable with. But I also did focus more on the MBE. So me taking those essays was just like, I just need to get familiar with this subject area and I need to really focus my time on the MBE. So I don't think there's a formula to it, but I do think that once you take 10 essays of civil procedure, you're going to start to see the patterns and the types of questions that they ask. They don't really, they very, very rarely, from what I can tell from Bar Now, do they test something that they've never tested before. It's usually within the same realm. So by the time you get through a certain number of essays, you're going to start to see, okay, this is what they typically ask. That's not to say don't study the things that they don't usually ask, because that might be the year that they decide to test that thing. But just be sure that you're covering everything and then just being on top of the things that they usually test. I think that's very important. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I can jump in as well. I don't frankly remember the exact number of essays I did or MPTs I did, but I stuck pretty closely to what the Barbary course told me to do. And they sort of have, I mean, you don't have to follow it 100% like the other panelists have said. You have to do what works for you. But I think one thing I liked about it is that I didn't have to think too hard about how many do I have to do, when do I have to do it. I just followed it generally speaking. And I frankly didn't get to 100%. I wasn't even, I think I got like 70, upper 70s%. And at the end, I started just doing things that I think I needed more work on. Very few people actually hit 100% in the course from what I've seen out of all my friends as well. Uh, but yeah, the point being, I don't remember the exact number of essays I did fully, but what I will say is near the end of the course, I didn't hit 100%, so I felt a bit behind. So what I started to do is I looked at the topics that I thought I was the weakest in, and I actually just quickly went to the question. I outlined my answer, and then compared it to the model answer. So the point being that after you do a certain number of essays and you learn how much time to budget for outlining and actually writing and all that, once you've sort of have a handle on the time management side of it, you can really speed through the essays and the topics that you need help on by just getting sample questions, trying, 10, 15 minutes, just bullet out what you think the answers are, and then compare it to the model answers. And that's how I think near the end really just got through a bunch of material, is that I stopped caring so much about having perfectly crafted answers fully written out, and I started looking at the sample answers, comparing it to my bulleted answers, and that helped me just cover a lot of different topics and a lot of different practice questions near the end of my prep.
Awesome. Again, all very helpful advice. Shahid, do you want to share?
Yes, I'll say as a repeat taker myself, what I did was I asked for my first test back and I actually looked at my answers and what I did wrong. And I found myself worried. I overwrote. I wrote a lot a lot, and I didn't finish my last essay. So I had to worry on my timing this time. And my second time taking it, I wrote an essay every single day just to get the timing down, just to get the feel of it. Because the first time I took it, I didn't complete all 6 essays in a lot of time because I was so focused on giving every single point that I ended up running out of time. So it's very important that you want to get into the habit of just getting the timing down and the understanding of the material and knowing the rules and which rules are being triggered and which rules to put down in your IRAC. It's just really about repetition. I did it every day. Don't know how many that adds up to, but it was a lot. But whatever works for you. If you need time working on your timing, focus on that. If you need time working on the rule statements, focus on that. Whatever's personal to you is what you need to focus on for the bar.
Yes, appreciate everyone's answers to this question. A lot of helpful advice again. The next topic we'd like to talk about is managing stress. Of course, this is a really stressful time, really stressful exam, stressful, couple of months leading up to it. Any advice on managing that stress?
I'm gonna start with
Yeah.
this one. So I 100% it the first time I did the bar prep. 100% of everything. I did 12 hours a day. I didn't go outside. I didn't see my friends. I was very unhealthy in my study. I didn't pass. So the second time around, I wanted to make an effort to every Friday to just like stop, just stop. I'm not gonna learn everything today. There's a certain point where your brain just stops working. Like after a while, you need to learn when to put the book down, put the computer down, touch grass, see your friends. Go outside, live your life. It's very important not to let this consume you because it can be a drain on what you're actually retaining, what you're actually learning. You may think you're learning at 10 p.m., but if you've been studying for 12 hours, you're not really retaining that information. You're kind of just glazing over it. So please be reasonable with your time, how much time you're studying a day. And as uncomfortable as it may seem, please take a day off. Like, please go outside, see your friends. Don't even talk about bar prep with your friends. Just go watch a game or something. It's very important to disconnect so you can be at your best when you're taking this test. Don't do this the entire way and don't take any days off. That's not healthy, please.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. I took the exam twice. The first time around, I didn't have much of a social life outside of just, maybe studying with friends that are also taking a bar exam, which isn't fun to just be in a room with a bunch of people studying for the bar exam, right? Um, So no, yeah, make sure you take care of, the important things in life. If it's your birthday or if it's a family member's birthday or something going on, like a wedding, like make sure to attend those things and manage your time appropriately so you don't feel guilty for not studying during that time, right? Um, and just doing things that you enjoy, treat this as like something where there's a hard cutoff at a certain part of the day. Know yourself when you feel like you're not able to study or when do you just need a break, just take that break. I know the World Cup is coming up, so like if people like the World Cup, maybe watch a game in the morning and study later in the day or save all those highlights for later in the day, do something that you're going to enjoy, have something to look forward to outside of just waking up the next day to study. Always keep yourself fresh and motivated because that's going to keep you like it's going to keep you motivated to keep going. Otherwise, you're not going to feel like there's any like end in sight except taking the exam. And I think that's what made the difference for me between the first time and second time of not feeling burnout. That second time really was just making sure I did things that came up. If a friend wanted to do something, or like if I wanted to get dinner with friends, I would just go do it. Like I wouldn't feel guilty about it because you could always make up that time. It's probably better for you to do that too, to socialize than to
Yeah.
just be stuck in front of a screen reading or doing essays at an odd hour of the day when you really should be taking some time for yourself to decompress after a long day of studying.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I think that what's really important is not switching whatever you usually do. So if you are I'm a morning person, so I like to have my morning routine, and that's like what I like to do. But if you are not a morning person, don't start the bar exam and all of a sudden decide I'm going to wake up every morning 4 o'clock for Fajr and get started studying. Like if that's not what you usually do, don't do that because your body has to get used to studying for the bar, and now you're getting used to this new routine that you just decided to do. So don't do that. And that's the advice that I've gotten from judges, from professors, from everyone. And I think it really makes sense, especially because in, while you're studying, you are like, it's like you're mixing the ingredients, you're putting everything together. You need to have it, you need to give yourself time to let all that stuff cook and just let it sit in your brain and let it just like marinate. And the way you do that is by, like the other panelists said, just taking some time off and watching mindless TV. If it's the World Cup, if it's Love Island, if it's whatever, like let that be your thing, so that your brain can just shut off and just marinate whatever that you stuffed in it all that day. So that's what I would say is probably the most important thing. I think a lot of people are like, oh, like I don't have to work, I don't have class, like let me start to go to the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, you've never done that ever before, so why are you starting that now when you need to study for the bar exam? I think it's important to stay active and go outside and touch grass and get fresh air and walk and get that blood flowing, but don't start CrossFit at 8 o'clock in the morning when you've never done that before. That just doesn't make any sense. And what I also say, it's important to try to take half days if you can. And in Barbary, and I'm pretty sure this is all of the programs, you can set your schedule. So you can say that you want to study for 8 hours out of the day, or you can take a day off, or you can make certain days like half days. Utilize that program, because Barbary will tell you what you need to do for that day within the confines that you set. Like they'll only give you 4 hours out of work if you said that you wanted to work a half day that day. And they'll also, like, you can work if you want to, but it'll tell you that your today's an off day for you. So those are the things that I would say. Don't switch up your schedule. Go outside and get fresh air, and just set a schedule for yourself that makes sense for your lifestyle. And don't miss out on weddings and birthdays and holidays and things that make you happy, because you don't want to be miserable while you're studying for the bar exam. Because once you pass, you're going to be like, oh my God, I missed my sister's wedding, or oh my God, I missed this, because you were studying for the bar exam. And it's really not worth it. Like, you're going to pass. Inshallah, everybody's going to do very well. And even if you don't, you'll take it again and pass. But you don't want to miss those huge milestones in your life for this exam, because it's deep, but it's not that deep. Like, you don't want to ruin your life for it. So that's my 2 cents again.
Yeah, I can also share my experience. I think just from the outset, knowing that these are all great stress management tips, and I echo what everybody said, but it's going to be a stressful couple of months in your life, and just being honest about that up front. Like this, it's no, walk in the park. It's not fun, but you have to I'd say some practical advice I can give, I think, is starting to study as early as possible. It's something I didn't do. I kind of took a few weeks off after grad, and I think it's important to take some time off after graduation and let yourself decompress and celebrate the fact that you graduated if you're taking it right after graduating law school. But trying to start as early as possible and give yourself more weeks than you think you'd need is important, because by the time of my time studying, like Barbary was telling me I have to do 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I'm like, all right, I'm not doing that. I'm not hitting 100%. And that's because I didn't start as early as possible. Because, things come up. You'll have a day where you're supposed to study 9 hours, and you're only able to do, 4 hours. And then you're behind that many hours, and it's hard to catch up. So giving yourself, I think, more weeks to study is pretty important. I think taking at least like a day off a week, if possible, in your study program, also very important for your mental health. Um, but also, I do think that you want to stick generally to your schedule, like you don't want to make it a habit to be a few hours behind every day. You're like, oh, it's only a few hours, because I think it does accumulate, and it's going to make you more stressed near the end of your studying is if you're way behind your study plan. So, set a study plan from the beginning, give yourself the time off, make sure you're still able to go to the birthdays and celebrate things that you need to celebrate, and keep yourself, happy. But then try to stick to it. When you have the days of those deep work sessions that you have to do, like you have to sort of set your life to allow yourself to do that. And that's, I think, my biggest tip with stress management is I said from the outset, it's going to be a stressful couple of months, and you have to sort of set your life up as much as possible. I know people have different life situations, people have families, so on and so forth, but you have to try to minimize outside distractions as much as possible for these couple of months. And you got to, tell your loved ones like, hey, these couple of months I'm going to be studying. That's my full-time job. I have to treat it like that. Just because I'm not clocking in and out of work doesn't mean that I'm not going to be busy during 8 a.m. to whenever you stop studying. Like, you have to tell your loved ones that this is an intense couple of months, and they should, inshallah, hopefully support you and let you focus and take the time you need to pass the bar exam. So just setting your life up and trying to limit outside distractions, trying to limit, you know, extra sort of stressors in your life, I think is pretty important from the outset of your studying.
It's funny. I'm laughing because when you said to limit external stressors, I got married right after taking the board exam, like 3 weeks later. So it was a huge external stressor that whole summer. Do not
I got,
recommend.
I got married 10 days after, so I'm not
Oh,
practicing what I preach, to be clear.
yeah.
But
I guess we
yeah,
learned from our experience. Yes. So yeah, I mean, inshallah, loved ones will understand. And I appreciate also the cooking metaphor. I love that. Fanta, like the marinating, exactly like sometimes information just needs time in your brain and you can't even reading it again and again isn't going to change it. It's going to be like, letting yourself relax. So appreciate that. Okay, the last topic before we go to talking about the changes to the bar exam, is the test day. So I would love to hear from panelists about what advice you have come test day.
Please listen to me and listen to me well. If you never did anything before, like out of the ordinary, please don't start to do it on the test day. So I did something very stupid. I decided to like stand up and like move around during the test day to keep my blood flowing. I never did that during studying. I don't know why I thought I was into that. If you have a certain like testing strategy, please stick to it. Please, during test day, if it helps you, bring material. If it doesn't help you, don't bring material. If you need to pack a lunch, pack your own lunch. Have a plan for the day of. It's very important to know what you're going to do when you go to the test. So if you're going to bring your own lunch, if you're going to, I mean, if you're in an area like New York City, the lunch options around may be a little crowded during lunch. You might want to pack a lunch, but if you're in somewhere like Buffalo, New York, might be able to go grab a lunch. It all depends on where your testing site is. So you might have to pack lunch based on your testing site. You might want to bring materials with you, but if that stresses you out, the materials with you. But if you never did anything before, don't try something new. Don't be like me and read an article and say, oh, the blood works better and you may move around. So, do jumping jacks during the bar exam. Don't do that. Don't do that. But definitely have a plan for the bar exam day of and stick to that plan and make sure that, when you get there, you know what you're gonna do, you know where you're gonna eat food, how you're gonna get food, what your time is to get back into the room. You don't want to be running late, running to get food and then running back into the room. Have everything, together. But I would also say that with the test day itself, you got this. You guys are very confident in yourselves. Don't spend a lot of time after the exam when it's done second guessing the answers or going over what it could have been or it could have been that could. Once it's done, close the book and please enjoy your summer. Once the test is over with, leave it there. The results will come out. Go forward with your lives. But make sure you have a plan for the day out.
I'll say that I think it's important to treat practice like it's game day, right? So when game day comes, you've already practiced and you know what to expect. So in a few weeks, probably maybe like early or maybe late June, you're going to get like the rules for the testing site, like what you can bring in and all of that. Once you get that, take a couple of minutes or take 20 minutes and figure out what all that stuff is. If you need to bring your own pencils, bring your own pencils, put it in a little baggie, set that aside, like do all that stuff early on so you don't have to worry about it 2 weeks or 1 week or 2 days before the bar exam. But give yourself benchmarkers of times where you treat your practice day like it's game day. Give yourself a full written day where the first half you're doing MPTs and the second half you're doing essay, wherever they break it up in your jurisdiction. Because that way on game day, this is not a super foreign concept. That's one thing that I'll say. And then I'm actually going to push back on Shahid in terms of buying lunch. Don't buy lunch because you're going to get sick. They're going to poison your food. Something's going to happen. It's going to be terrible. So don't buy lunch. Stick with what you know. Make your PB&J at home and bring it with you. That way you don't have to worry about the lines. You don't have to worry about if they, take Apple Pay or cash or whatever. You don't have to worry about any of that. You have your food. You can eat it in the time that you can eat it. And then you can get back to, going back to the exam. You want to, whoever said it earlier, eliminate as many distractions and options as possible. You don't want to have any choices. Like, this is what you're doing today, and this is what's going to happen. I'm going to take the bar exam in the morning. I'm going to have lunch. I'm going back, and I'm going to take it again in the afternoon, and that's going to be it. So those are the things I'll say for the actual day. In terms of the morning, I guess it depends on where you are. You know, sometimes I guess some people stay in hotels, or if you live closer or whatever. Some jurisdictions may not allow you to do this, but if you're staying in a hotel the couple of days, like the Tuesday or whatever, or the Monday before, try to go to the hotel and, you know, just scope the scenery out, see what it looks like, see what the, if it's for us, it was at the Pennsylvania Convention Center. For most people, it's at a convention center. Go to the convention center, see what it looks like. Go see where the bathrooms are. Just go look at where you're at, see what it is, so that when game day comes, you're not scrambling trying to find the bathroom and it's on the whole other side of the convention center, and now you're late for the second half of the MBE. So just do those things, prepare yourself early enough on so that when it is game day, you have already practiced and you're prepared for the game, and in that way you'll win. So those are the things that I'll say. And don't eat lunch from anywhere else, especially it might be greasy. Like you might, don't do it. That's not a good idea. Not a good idea. So I'm gonna push back on that, but I'll let it to the other panelists.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing about lunch. You know, you want to keep it light, you want to keep it healthy. Whatever you've been eating while you've been studying, just keep it the same as possible. You know, you don't want to have to think about what you're going to be eating after the first half of the exam. You want to limit as much of thinking to like things that aren't related to the bar exam too after you finish the exam, right? You want to have your clothes laid out. You want to just have everything like ready to go. Keep it simple. You know, think of it like eat morning, just have your clothes ready to go. Have everything ready to go. You know, you don't want to have anything extra to think about, and just go there early. Most places like Fento was saying, they're open to people coming in. I know my exam was at the Ontario Convention Center here in SoCal. The day before the first day of examinations, all the proctors and everyone were already there setting up, getting the tables ready. So you could go in and take a look at, the building. You could take a look at the entrances, the exits, the restrooms, wherever it is you're going to be taking the exam, and even just talk to them, see like what you're allowed to bring in, what you're not allowed to bring in. Like if you want to do that, you don't want to be worrying about studying on that last day. You want to be ready for the actual exam day at that point. So I'd say, for exam day, it doesn't hurt to go and check out the testing center, especially if they allow you to do so. And, you know, eat a nice, healthy, light lunch and you'll be okay.
I'll keep my answer quick. I think everybody else touched on important things. One thing is, as soon as you find out the well, you know the dates beforehand, but the exact location and testing center, try to go ahead and get the hotels and the rental cars and everything as soon as you can, because you'll see that a lot of the hotels, especially if it's not a big city, are going to be booked out and the prices are going to be jacked up very quickly. So as soon as you can, as soon as you find out the exact testing center, the exact dates, just go ahead and try to find a hotel close to the testing center. Get a car if you need. So rent a car as early as possible because those also run out. In terms of practical advice, day of, make sure you're staying hydrated. I'd say err on the side of eating a light lunch if you can. You don't want your stomach to be so full and your body being like, I don't know. I get very sleepy after I eat like a heavy carb dense meal, so I tried to stay light on the meals. Um, let's see what else. The nights in between the exams don't. So I just generally speaking, I was on the subreddit, the bar exam subreddit. I'm sure many other people were too, and it's sort of like a neurotic mess. It's helpful, I think, at certain points in my journey to check it just to see, sort of the top rated resources and different videos to watch and things like that. But there's no point in doing it once the exam starts. Like, stay offline. Don't look at what other people are saying. You'll just get in your head and psych yourself out. And also, don't really talk to other people, I think, about the exam because they'll say, "Oh, I put X, Y." But first off, you're not supposed to talk about the exam at all. But don't talk about how it went. Like some people be like, "Oh, I thought the essays were so hard." There's no point in talking to people about it. At that point, you've done all the studying. Inshallah, you're gonna do fine. You're gonna pass. Just get in there and get out, and then forget about it. Like after you finish the last day. I mean, I didn't have any time to think about it because I had my wedding in like a week, and I was like practicing dances for it and stuff, which was nice that it forced me to switch my mindset. But if you don't have a wedding coming up, just try to forget about it and move on, as hard as it is. The next time I thought about the bar exam after I took it was literally like a few days before it was supposed to come out, and I was like sort of psyching myself out. And that's, I would say, avoid that, but that's sort of unavoidable, I think. But yeah, inshallah, at that point when it's test day, you've done everything you can. Just try to limit outside distractions, try to stay hydrated, well fed, and inshallah, at that point, you'll do great.
Yes, thank you all. Thank you all for your words of wisdom. Super helpful advice. We do have a couple of minutes left, and Shahid has some slides prepared on the changes to the bar exam this year, in some jurisdictions. So, Shahid, I'll pass it to you, and let me know if you want me to share my screen or if you got it.
You can share the screen. I don't have permission. Sorry
Sure.
about that, guys. I had a client protesting at the Laney Hall, if you know, the ICE facility down in Newark, and he was arrested. So I had to submit an emergency letter of representation for, inshallah he's okay, but this ICE stuff is going. Um, Okay. So for the bar exam and the UBE, it's broken down. It's usually held 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday every February and July. It's 6 hours with a lunch break. The first part is weighed differently. So the first part is MPT. That's 20% of your overall grade. The MEE is 30% of your overall grade, and the MBE is 50% of your overall grade. The two
Sorry,
essays
Shahid,
are 50%.
can I jump in real
Yes.
quick? Maybe since we are about at time, we can focus on the changes to the exam.
Yeah. We can go past the next one. So
So
this one, beginning in 2026, conflict of laws, family laws, trust in the state, secure transactions will no longer be tested on the ME, but they will appear on the MPT. So this allows for more streamline into the next gen bar. The next slide. Um, so the next gen bar, they're going to be rolling out this year in Connecticut, Guam, and these other states stated below, will be shortened from the original MBE stage, and it's going to be rolled out over the next couple of years for the upcoming states, as you see. Next slide. The difference is that there are going to be one morning session, one afternoon session, and then one morning session, and that'll be the entire day. So instead of 2 days, 6 hour session is going to be 2 days, 9 hours, one 6 hour session, one 3 hour session. We have integrated fact sets where there are going to be two correct answers, multiple choice, and then short answers. So with the multiple choice formats, there'll be one of four, and then there'll be two of six. So there'll be two correct answers and multiple choice quests. And then the performance tests, there'll be longer writing assignments with legal research inside the facts pattern. So it'll be like a mini MPT if you're familiar with the set. But it's more of a change where they start off with the multiple choice standalones, two integrated sets, and then one MPT at the end. So every session will be the same. It'll be multiple choice starting off, then it'll be integrated question sets, then it'll be one MPT at the end with the integrated questions. That'll be each 3 hour section. So instead of going one day writing, one day multiple choice, it's going to be every single day, multiple choice, writing, writing, multiple choice, writing, writing, multiple choice, writing, writing. And that is the breakdown of the next gen bar exam for each 3 hours for the first 2 days. And then the next day would be the last section. That's the very quick rundown of the changes. If anybody has any questions, please let me know. Once again, I'm so sorry I had an emergency earlier with ICE. And yeah, so if anybody has any questions, please let us know. Questions in the chat. Anybody have any questions for the panelists? Not seeing any hands raised.
All right.
Thank you.
Hearing none, then we can wrap here. And thanks again to the panelists for sharing your time and really, really helpful advice. Hope everyone has a good rest of your weekend. Inshallah.
Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.